Greetings, sending all some warm, positive vibrations. This is Body-Culinary. And today, I wanted to come on to have a communication. So, the thoughts that have been coming up in this quiet time of reflection, is triggeration, what I like to call triggeration. And what I mean by triggeration is we are in a climate and environment, the environment inclusive of social media, that is triggering. It's triggering, causing knee-jerk responses and affecting not only us internally, chemically, but also affecting our decision making and our mental and emotional health. And whether we like it or not, I don't know if perhaps many of us slow down enough to notice we are triggered from the moment that we turn on these screens, yet the screens are very necessary now for many of us to do business and with all of the shutdowns to communicate with a lot of the world. And so I call it triggeration, right? So now the terms triggering, gaslighting, narcissism, these are terms now that many of us are becoming familiar with. If you weren't familiar with it, now you hear it becoming like common pop culture that these terms are talked about. So that's what we're going to chit chat about today, and how I make an effort to be very careful with my choice of words to the best of my ability, because the goal is to be effective. The goal is to be effective. So I was just thinking how our naive, ill-informed, impulsive, traumatized, and trauma-based decisions will affect the entire trajectory of our lives, as well as the lives of our offspring. And if we are those folks that choose not to have offspring, then we're affecting the climate of all the young people and the adults around us. And primarily, we're affecting our lives, but definitely the climate that we're in. So if you're interested in this particular conversation, this reflection, you're welcome to stay tuned to the video. On this channel, I do share about hair. And as a matter of fact, I just washed this very, very fine, kinky, carpety, locks with no products in it. I just water rinsed it again. I've shared on this channel, I often water rinse my hair because it's very relaxing to me and there's no product in it. So it's in the process of drying now. So we won't even call it the quickie style of today, because I'm very intentional about taking a lot off the table. And there's so much that I find more of a priority for my time, like my movement practice. Today, I got an opportunity to go to a really beautiful, serene piece of land by the river and canoe over. So that was so beautiful and peaceful. And it's such a contrast to having to turn on the screen and being bombarded with all these different things happening in the world, whether it's violence, people concerned about their families, um, reports of ill health and health catastrophes. So I call it triggeration because you're affected by it. So in this hair, right, and taking a lot of validation and just what I find stressful, so much with hair care hours, and it can also be soothing, could also be distracting, it could also be self-therapeutic, it can be all those things. But I found that it's one thing I like to take off the table, right? We only have so much of a bandwidth. So taking a lot of being concerned about acne and hyperpigmentation, and for me, this is just one person's experience, having to be so concerned about putting on makeup and foundation. That's not, it's not a priority for me. And to be going to the salon, I've taken it off the table so I can free up space for processing things that are more important to my mental and my emotional health. Now, let's not get it twisted. Makeup is definitely a tool, right? However, your fitness and your health are huge, and they're foundational, and they're sustainable to your lifestyle, your mental and emotional health. So if I have a choice between the two, I will prioritize a personal movement practice and my consumption patterns in order to support my mental, emotional, and physical health. because when those things are compromised, you're much less in a position to process effectively all the stress and the triggeration that is coming at us, right? Involuntarily. If your ears and your eyes are open today, it's coming at you. And it triggers, as I've mentioned on this channel, the five basic human fears, right? Fear of poverty, fear of loss of love and never finding love, fear of criticism, fear of old age, and fear of death. These are primal fears that humans have. So from the moment you turn on these screens, these are things that we're bombarded with, and it bypasses your logic. It bypasses your logic and hits the main vein and triggers primal fears that are triggered in our subconscious. Our subconscious drives the majority of our behavior. So, if you're interested in this conversation, still stay tuned. On this channel, I share my journey of radical self acceptance and celebrating the natural features I was divinely assigned at birth. Also, 3 lifestyle practices: garden therapy, cultivating a personal movement practice, and peaceful consumption. Food that loves you back, food that is peaceful to your brain, your arteries, your colon, your mood, your longevity, and your vitality. So perhaps having some principles can guide your food choices a lot easier, right? So even if we're looking to self-soothe ourselves with food or other substances, if you have a litmus test for what you allow into your body temple, it can make that decision making a lot easier. Again, you're taking a lot off of the table. So that's what I share here on this channel. Feel free to comment respectfully, like, subscribe, or perhaps share this channel video with someone that could benefit. I invite you to make good use of multiplying your use of the internet and perhaps replaying this as you're relaxing, cutting up your fruits and vegetables, stretching, or decluttering. That's a great use of this channel. Also, there are several resources that are available. The links are in the description. Whole Living Foods, which is a lifestyle guide to perhaps shorten your learning curve if you're interested in eating whole, fresh, unprocessed, unpackaged foods as a lifestyle, right? So I'll give you a lot of my information and pictures and sample budgets and shops that you can take very, very practical, even if you're a mom or a person on a spending plan. So there's that, as well as natural beauty, no products. If perhaps you're a person that's dealt with a lot of acne and hyperpigmentation, I'm using only food. The food is the products. That's what's going primarily inside and then also on the outside. So that being said, over on this channel, Radical Self-Acceptance is a lifestyle tool, again, to take a lot of stress off the table. And I like to say that natural bodies, they matter. They matter over here. Natural bodies, they matter, whatever the size of your breasts. Our main concern is that they are growth and tumor free, right? Because we have so much sickness, so much stress, it's hard for us to even get to ground zero. Many of us are operating at a negative, right? So at least want to take a lot of distraction off the table so we can get to ground zero. And then from ground zero, the goal is for us to go upward on the scale to thriving, not merely being in desperation and thriving. So today, I just wanted to shout out. I was thinking definitely of as a woman, of us as women, and then also as men. Something for us to consider without making ourselves bad or wrong, right? In your own quiet moments, is to consider where a lot of our decision making is coming from. And also something to consider if you are a parent, right? I wonder if many of us consider that many of our behaviors, and then we think we're free of criticism or being reprimanded because we're the adults. That a lot of our decisions are not only affecting, but really triggering to our children, even when they don't have a language to articulate it. A lot of our decisions, our impulsive decisions, poor decisions, who we choose to be around, none of us, not even I, is exempt. A lot of our decisions are triggering our children and triggering trauma. Children are not adults. They're not adults. Children are not adults. So they're processing things in a whole nother way different than adults. And a lot of the behaviors can trigger their ability to feel safe and secure. This will play into their future. And I think it's interesting sometimes. I would even say I find it hypocritical as adults, some of the ways that we speak about young people as if we are not aware of us being in the same position as young people and realizing how much of watching perhaps instability, grown-ups and parents arguing, or a parent disappearing, or just instability, or listening, overhearing conversations, how much that triggered fright and fear in us. And so I just think something for us to consider, especially if you're one of those people that has come to this channel, because I get quite a few younger women come to this channel, and I've heard some folks say, oh, I would like to apprentice, I want to study under you, which I think about a lot. And I wonder what really, if folks just want herbal recipes, or they want to learn how to have clear skin, or maybe perhaps if you think I have, some secret wisdom, because wisdom is not information. And I think it sounds nice initially, or folks may find people you resonate with hair, or you like my recipes, or tone of voice, or something. But until I'm saying something that folks don't like, then it's not so likable. Because in the day I come up in apprenticeship is taking instruction. Apprenticeship is not an easy thing. I know I've apprenticed before in a dance company. I've had mentors before in terms of holistic health. So there was a lot of grunt work. So I don't know that folks are prepared for that. I find that some folks ask, I would like to apprentice or study, and then want to set the terms, or have their own, not set the terms, have their own idea for what an apprenticeship looks like to study under something. I don't know if folks ever remember, this generation, or folks remember the old karate movies, when there was a student that would go and petition or go approach a teacher to study. So it was a lot for someone to, and I'm not saying I know everything or I'm the end all be all, but the information or knowledge that the teacher would give out, they wouldn't just have give it to anybody freely, right? Because there's no guarantee in this age of information that people are going to take the information and not, how can I say it, that there's a maturity when you have certain information, right? There's so much information, for example, on the internet. Let's say like tantra and eggs, jade eggs, and different things, as far as intimate physical relations. However, at the same time, it's being disseminated, as you can see, with males and females, with a total lack of respect, a total lack of intimacy. There's definitely, it doesn't appear to be any respect for process, right? If someone has taken 10, 20, 30, 40 years to develop something, to cultivate something, now that folks have easy access to something, sometimes there's even a sense of entitlement to information. For example, we may feel entitled to certain information from elders because we share the same skin color, right? So that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a respect, or that there's respect for process, that there's respect for the information and what had to be gone through for someone to be able to present some information. So I observe, with the lack of respect, a lot of times that information is squandered. And so we never seem to get to another level of development. It can also be observed as a species, and definitely as a collective. There are many areas of underdevelopment, a lack of maturity, a lack of thinking long term, a lack of responsibility. And there's not quite often, you know, it's not really palatable. No one's volunteering to admit this, right? That we don't all have it figured out. But definitely when it comes to accountability and responsibility, you just don't hear that tone, especially online or in YouTube. You can hear people bashing each other, but often what I find from all different camps, whatever people want to identify themselves with, there's not a primary focus on accountability and responsibility. Usually that kind of focus would take many of us offline to do work on ourselves, because usually when it comes to accountability and responsibility, that means there's a lot to do, there's a lot to acknowledge, and it's uncomfortable. It's not pretty. It's beyond the makeup and the outfits which we are so enamored with. So I just got to thinking a lot of our decisions made in naivety, right? Being in naive. A lot of our decisions made with ill information, poor information that's not cross-referenced, just following these personalities because they're triggering something within us, so we feel listened to, we feel represented, but we're ill-informed. A lot of our impulsive decisions, a lot of our decisions, even following online personalities, coming from being trauma-based. A lot of our decisions coming from having been traumatized. This is the space that we're making a lot of decisions from. Yet we're jumping into different people's camps, whether this is political or parties, and following people with a whole nother level of groupthink, and not it's not occurring to us how we're allowing ourselves to be manipulated and misled, that we're also responsible and participating in it. So again, our naive, ill-informed, even if you're an older adult, impulsive, traumatized, and trauma-based decisions, a lot of it is being triggered on social media. It's being triggered through the music. It's definitely being triggered through fantasizing about these celebrity personalities who we can't vet, who we don't live with. If we really had to think about it, it doesn't make sense. But this is the socially acceptable climate. Even the rationalization and justification for pop rock stars who, really you like their music. And we make all kinds of excuses and justifications for their relations and interactions with children. Not that the music isn't good. So it doesn't appear we're very discerning, and it appears that our discernment is being dulled more and more. So where perhaps uh, could we have a better use of our time? How can we multiply our common sense, right? How can we cultivate more discernment, right? Discernment and common sense judgment, right? With just any words that come out, we don't think very deeply. We don't compare and contrast. We just go with the triggered emotion and don't seem to think. And so you can see within our results, if we just look collectively at our results, not our labels, can we say that we're really effective in parenting? Can we say that we're really effective when it comes to our health? Can we say that we're really effective when it comes to the decisions that we're making in our teens and our 20s, when at this time these decisions in our late teens and our 20s will affect the entire trajectory of our lives, the entire trajectory of our lives and our potential offspring. Those decisions that you make around child rearing, putting your reproductive organs in harm's way, how you're spending money, creating debt, choosing what your profession is going to be, affect the entire trajectory of our lives. It affects generational poverty or generational wealth, right? There are some cultures that perhaps or groups of people that maybe get it a little quicker only because of what they're subjected to in our lives. Yet, in the absence of so much, and it can be confusing, it can even be considered a maze or a rabbit hole. But can we or can we not say, you let me know respectfully what you think in the comments, that we are taking our cues for whether it be a political party, voting, how to handle or manage our reproductive organs, how to manage safety, how to manage who, what, when, and where we choose to be parents. We're taking our cues from made up, painted celebrities that we cannot vet, that we don't see how they live. So perhaps it is up to us to just in quiet reflection be like, where does that come from? How do we use celebrities as a litmus test for our decision making process? Right? There's a difference between, and I don't know that I could articulate this that much in my teens. People say, don't judge, don't judge. Well, hold on a minute. There's a difference between judgment, common sense judgment, and discernment. And there's a difference in judgment of being condemning of other people just because of their package or they have a difference in lifestyle. Just one woman's perspective. Judgment is key. You should judge. I find it very interesting that you're encouraged not to be judgmental when something that you see in front of your eyes makes no sense, is lacking in character. You're asked not to judge what it is that you're seeing, right? there's a difference between that and judgment of common sense. So there's an underdevelopment in the discernment department. So whoever is put in front of you at any given time, can we say that we are effective and efficient at dissecting what is the principle, not the person or the personality? What is it? Greetings. What is it that I'm to take from this and to discern and not get so emotionally attached to the preacher, the imam, the whatever in whatever tradition that I'm attached to the personality. I'm attached to the hypnotic beats of the music. I'm attached to the body. I'm attached to the tone of voice. I'm attached to that. And we don't see that somehow we turn off our discernment. Someone throws terms out like brother, sister, all natural, good and bad, and our judgment, our common sense judgment goes out the window, especially in your teens and your 20s without a frame of reference. You're extremely vulnerable to being triggered to make naive, ill-informed, impulsive, traumatized, and trauma-based decisions that will affect the entire trajectory of your life and the entire trajectory of the offspring, potential offspring. And this may be something that we may not want to hear. And again, I hope that folks are not offended, but it's just one woman's perspective. I wonder if we ever stop to reflect that many of us, based on us choosing and being the ones that will have to take care of children, I wonder if we're stopping to think like, okay, this person is not prepared financially to be a father. This person, I'm choosing to engage because I like their style of dress, I like their tone, I find them so sexually appealing. Based on that, I'm going to choose this person that has not demonstrated that they are interested in being a parent. I don't know that we consider how stressful that is. If we're really honest, I don't know that many of us women really want to be parents beyond the child baby phase, right? Beyond the baby clothes and the showers and putting on cute little hats. I don't know that we can honestly say, because just as much as the men, we're not prepared. And then we get an amen and a high five from people saying there's never a perfect time. Discernment. There's a difference between, I know with my own common sense, I'm not prepared. I'm not ready. And maybe perhaps out of guilt or not wanting to be in full acknowledgement of a poor decision, we're not prepared emotionally, mentally. It doesn't occur to us that we're making lifelong decisions that affect our lives and other children that going to affect their entire life. For example, doesn't mean you're a bad person, but if you don't have the resources to provide for protection, because human beings, little small human beings, we like to call them babies, they need protection so they are not tampered with. Their reproductive organs, the emotional mental state is not tampered with in those formative years. That costs. For us to provide the type of environments where they are protected and feel stable and have the healthy food that they need, that costs fiat. That requires beyond the money. That means we will have to choose the environment that they're in. Can we honestly say that we're prepared for that? So we're winging it, and we're not, just as much as we can talk about men folks. I don't know that as women we're really honest that maybe perhaps we want, and it's not making us bad or wrong. However, we're accountable. We want company. Maybe perhaps we're thinking of, these children will provide for me when I'm older. However, beyond the baby and the child phase, as we can see, there's no guarantee of what you're going to get. You don't know if you can get a child that is developmentally different, or we're not counting on the stress or all of the poor health habits that we have and all the medication. We're not considering that could affect autism. We're not considering all the stress hormones that the infant is bathed in, right? Cells, food, hormones are all instructions and information. So you don't like the father, you're feeling unsure, you're scared, you're making poor decisions. Then also this person's genetic makeup, what they've been taking in, all of this is going into these little human beings without making us bad or wrong. Can we not say that we're accountable? Right? Even if things don't turn out the way that we want with this human being, have we made provisions for these little human beings so that they can be stable emotionally and mentally, in addition to food, clothing, and shelter? Can we say that we're effective? Are we considering beyond religion? No offense to anybody religious. I was raised with religion. Can we say just basic human values, that we are clear on the values that we want to inculcate? Do we think that that comes out of a vacuum? Can we say that we demonstrating beyond religion the values? Are we setting up an environment for the children to eat healthy, for them to run free? That takes something. It takes something, not just winging it. So, in the absence of discernment and maturity, can we really say that we're mature in bringing little human beings here that we're ill prepared to take care of? The type of environment that we're bringing them into. That now we have more small human beings that are desensitized to violence and desensitized to care, consideration, thoughtfulness of others. So, are we choosing male? Are we choosing carefully? Or are we allowing ourselves to be triggered and hypnotized to leading with very impulsive with our loins? Little small decisions that affect everything. And then these little small humans will have to contend with it. And as we can see from the rates of folks choosing to end their life cycle, violence, folks are just collapsing internally, mentally, emotionally. Even many of us that are functioning, like we have functional substance abuse, that are functioning, able to pay bills and able to show up to work, but inside collapsed and not healthy. And so to try to have these conversations are triggering because it brings up a lot. Let me just say, commercial break. I am not the martyr. I am not Jesus Cristo. I have no illusions that I'm here to save anyone. I just sometimes, and I just sit and I just think like, wow, do any of us in our personal circles, do you have relationships where you tell each other the truth, right? Today, when you speak objectively on what you see, accountability comes across as an attack. That it seems to show underdevelopment. Even in any business, when you hire a consultant, you don't hire the consultant to tell you what you know about your business, the areas where your business is doing good. You're hiring a consultant. An Olympic athlete hires a consultant to get to another level of development. That's what you pay, invest in coaches. Folks that are usually really performing in business, other areas, that's the reason they don't hire a coach to tell them the good stuff that they know. They're hiring coaches to tell them the blind spots. So, as in business, the business of your body, the business of your life, it doesn't appear that we're thinking very long term. That shows, without making us bad or wrong, right? The goal is to be effective. It shows underdevelopment. It shows a lack of well-informed information. It shows a lack of compare and contrast. It shows that we're allowing ourselves to be triggered. We spend a lot of our time on social media and on reality TV. Can we say that this is really preparing us, not just for offspring, to flourish in our own lives, into the times where you will get old and your breasts will sag, and that the times where you will have erectile dysfunction or your body gets worn out? Or is all of this entertainment merely as a collective, we're choosing it because it's just soothing and having us not deal with the fear? That's a dopamine hit. There's something chemically happening I'm not making it right or wrong. I'm not immune. However, I do make a decision to have some discernment and some awareness. You cannot change something that you are not aware of. It appears that quite often we're piling one ineffective, not thought out decision on top of one another. So we're not thinking things through. very impulsive. We could have just been finished listening to some, some rap or some kind of triggering romantic song. This is the space from which we are creating little human beings. People who haven't vetted their character, or we don't particularly care for their character, or we haven't even taken the time to really investigate if we like them or we really know them. And we're bringing little human beings out of that connection, right? So that it's ineffective. It's not thought out. It's affecting our finance. It's affecting our ability. We can never seem to catch up financially, emotionally. We're not thinking of the stress that we're bringing on ourselves. And I'll say, there have been a few young women who I've spoke to, and I'm not telling, as my godmother did, I'm not telling anybody what to do. You have to pay me for that. And even then, I'm not interested in being the Christ, because then you get strung up. You see what happened to him, right? So you can talk few people that have, a few people I have spoken to, and you can speak until you're blue in the face, not making them bad or wrong, but then turn right around. You think like, just save this one person from making this life altering decision. And you can speak to them till you're blue in the face, and you'll see them turn around and make poor life decisions. So the goal is to be effective, not to be condemning or to judge them. My question as a parent, as a mother, as a coach, this is the same with personal training, same if I'm talking to a young person. What is that? Where's that coming from? Where is the willingness to self-sabotage, to put ourselves, our reproductive organs, our money, to put our choices in harm's way? Now, I'm fascinated by our self-sabotage, and I'm also equally fascinated by those of us that really assess and that can maintain a focus when it comes to studying or not going along with the crowd. Two different trajectories. Where does it come from? If you don't have an awareness, if you don't understand the principle, it's it's unlikely that you'll be able to replicate it. So if we just step back and look objectively, I can recognize the pattern that we're taking a lot of our cues, whether we want to admit it or not. It's hypnotic, the beats of the music. We're not even thinking of these sets of instructions of that, what we're mimicking and how it's affecting our decision-making process. We're taking our cues from a lot of the music and the literal programming and sets of instructions of what we're watching for hours on end on the screens. In addition to trying to process a lot of the trauma or the different things we've been exposed to as children. This is where our decision making is coming from. It's ineffective. And then we'll brag to each other as adults. We'll high five each other. Okay, even if we manage to get to a certain place economically, many of us, our health is shot. Many of us are legally addicted to socially acceptable substances. There's socially acceptable suicide. Nobody's going to bother you as much, about if it's an unhelpful weight, or if we know we're self-medicating with socially acceptable self-medicating. We can get a high five on it. We can get a whole posse to go out where we all self-medicating together. Right? So where's the health? Is what we're taking in. Does anybody have an honest conversation about how what we're taking in is affecting our sanity? See, these are the nuances. This is stuff you can't see, or we can put makeup on top of it. Makeup is a tool. We can put makeup on top. We can put Spanx on top of it. We can go puff Cuban cigars. We can put on a fresh new pair of kicks. But who we are, how we really feel about ourselves is always going to peek out. And we can't outrun our self-image, right? And we can get on all day and talk about I'm beautiful and say affirmation, but how we really feel about ourselves is going to peek out. And many of us have so many layers of unprocessed trauma. You can't even begin to know how to approach it, to resolve it, to neutralize it. Our best bet then becomes religion. And there's no shortage of religion. New religions and cults are being made up every day. Has it been? Can we really say that it's effective? Many of us are choosing the fantasy because it's easier than being accountable for our decisions. This is male and female, different flavors of the same thing. The hurt, the trauma, then we can acknowledge that we stay stuck in replaying the tapes of our parents. At some point, it's for us to realize whatever happened to us, our life is our responsibility. Because now that you know, now what is our rationalization and justification for making naive, ill-informed, impulsive, traumatized, and trauma-based decisions that affect not only our lives, the trajectory of our species as a community, our culture, our different ethnic groups. We're affecting the whole trajectory. And even if we're not thinking about the whole collective, ourselves. Hello, everybody. You will all get old. We will all get old. We will all take off our human suits. And there's no shortage of personalities willing to pander to us to sell us a pair of jeans or some more palettes. That is not really, I could be wrong. I just don't really get that it's not really hitting home. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. It's not cutting it for me, the temporary esteem I get from putting something on, because I got to take that mask off. I got to take it off at some point. The children can see the contradictions of the adults, can see the mask. They can see how we talk to our clients and people at work and other adults, but they can see they're not so jaded yet. They're not so jaded yet. They're not so jaded. So it's interesting to sit. It was the most beautiful, serene environment that I was just in, and to come out of that space and just ants and the river and no cars. Get you some garden therapy. I invite you to. And to come, and afterwards, no signal. So you had to shut down and go to sleep. You had to go to sleep. When it's dark, go to sleep. Oh my gosh, it was so restful. It was so peaceful. I was thinking like, wow, I wish I could just transmit this feeling before my eyes dropped off to sleep and I'm looking at the thatch roof and the ceiling, and all I heard was just birds and crickets. It was the quiet, and the crickets was so, it was just such peace. And then to come out, and from the time you turn on the screens trying to understand about this country and this, it's like, wow, dude, are we considering that this affects our sanity, our ability to be stable? And then compound that with the personalities that we don't know if they've really worked on and neutralized their trauma. And we're hypnotized and entranced by their dance, their oratory skills, their rap skills, their singing voice, their outfit, their uniform. And we're hypnotized and we're making decisions based on these little teeny pieces of orchestrated entertainment that we see. Is it peaceful? I don't know. Is it just me? Are you getting peace from that? Is it sustainable? And if it's not sustainable, constant trigger, then you got to turn it on to get another shot. And if we know substance abuse or anything, look up dopamine addiction. You need another hit and another hit and another hit, because it weakens us. It weakens us. It doesn't give you resilience. It doesn't develop grit. It doesn't develop character. So it really doesn't appear, and it appears more and more that we're just not, I'm humble. We're just not critically thinking, and without making ourselves bad or wrong. Why? Because we are in what I call a state of triggeration. In triggeration, it bypasses logic. We keep trying to depend on logic because we have several degrees and because we've read this many books. But your subconscious and primal fear will trumpet every single time. Fear of poverty, fear of old age, fear of death, fear of criticism, fear of loss of love and never finding love. It is subconscious, primal human behaviors. I would even say because we are under the belief that we can't be scammed, that we can't be manipulated, then we're perfect. You know, back in the days when I was in the travel industry, the perfect person to strap a bomb to was the person that was clueless. No one would ever think that somebody would stay with you for several years, have a child with you, and then plant a bomb on you. That's the perfect person to manipulate. The person that is either so blinded by ideals, this minister, this person in this esteemed position, this elder, they would never scam anybody. We're just not seeing things for what they are. And we're willingly, it appears, naively and willingly participating and being blind because it makes us feel better. It's self-soothing. So I don't know. Y'all tell me what you think, right? In a state of triggeration. And I say, what do we have access to? What can we do, right? Because it's a lot, it's a rabbit hole. It can be very confusing. It's so simple. It may seem overly simple. What we can do is give ourselves access to nature with some type of garden therapy, the 3 lifestyle practices, whether you're male or female. Garden therapy, cultivating a personal movement practice, and peaceful consumption, right? Food that loves you back, food that is going to nourish your body, be able to withstand the different types of viruses out here, that's going to nourish your nervous system. If you are taking in substances masquerading as food, it's a party in your mouth, it's got all the flavor. Ooh, it's so delicious. Your cells know the difference. Your cells can discern plastic, coloring, chemicals from chlorophyll, right? We hear all these terms, alkaline, and we know detox to retox. Buy expensive cleansing programs, get colonics to retox. The body is not stupid. It's highly intelligent. So if nothing else, I encourage you. Here's what you can do. You can eat real food. You can recognize it as a food. Why? Because anybody let me know out there, where's the control center? I know we're all enamored. I want clear skin. I don't want acne. I want nice muscle tone. Where is the control center? What are we eating for primarily? Somebody, anybody tell me. What are you eating for first? Your flat stomach, pimple-free skin, toned arms, your brain. The brain. Your control center. Wouldn't it make sense to protect this? Wouldn't we want the next generation of children to be autism free, to be able to make strong decisions? If your cells, this brain is primarily fatty tissue, right? If we're not taking in top quality nutrition, how do you make good decisions? If all you feed yourself, and I was a chip addict, a junk food addict, how do you expect to make good decisions? How do you expect not to be able to not to pop off on somebody because you have a short temper when your cells have no nutrition? Because you have no nourishment in your brain. I get the skin. I had a lot of acne. I get the muscle tone. I've been on stage. Again, this is just, it's vitamin quiet, vitamin peace. Can we really say this stuff, right? It looks so fantastic. I got beads, I got shells, I've got more outfits than I could ever wear in 365 days. Maybe it's just me. Can you really say it's giving you lasting contentment and peace that's not dependent on other people? Fickle human beings that change at the drop of a dime. Where are you getting your sustainable peace from? At least I know the guard is not trying to scam me and get in my panties, my purse, my psyche, and my pocketbook. Where are the lifestyle practices that sustain you, independent of religion, independent of personalities, and flawed human beings with agendas? So call it simple. Simple lifestyle practices. Grandma Lou, thank you. Eat real food. I would add to that, with its living water intact. We'll say we tout off information age. What's most of our body? Water. I know water. How much of your plate is water? Fresh, whole living water. It seems simple, but I tell you, the more substances masquerading as foods that we eat, it appears that we have less of an ability to discern because the brain is not getting nutrition. It's got the part in your mouth that's down, but the brain is not getting nutrition. So how can you be calm when stresses are hitting you all the time? How are you going to be calm and make calm decisions and you're not popping off on your children or your partner or your family members when you don't have B vitamins? Because the stuff you're eating, it's got proteins, fats, carbs, but it doesn't have B vitamins. How are you dealing with stress? All of your B vitamins are secreted constantly with stress, and you're taking in more cortisol. And for any of the men folks that are here, heightened cortisol production is connected with erectile dysfunction. So many of us don't change until there's a consequence. It's the conditioning of the human species today. And yes, you can eat all this healthy food and something can still happen. But just coming from that frame of mind, we're all going to die anyway. So I might as well just do the most effed up, just whatever I feel like in total disrespect of the body because we're going to die. That's a mentality. That's a mentality. So I just came on today just to encourage you. This is not meant to be a drag down discussion or negative discussion. However, I don't know. I don't really feel to come on here all the time and be performative. It just doesn't resonate with me. I'm not interested in putting on a pile of makeup to do a shuck and jive dance for people. Definitely not to convince people to beg and plead with people to eat healthy. That's not where it's at. If that's what we're doing, we're behind schedule. Again, that's underdevelopment. It shows with a lack of maturity. It's a lack of maturity. I'm not there with y'all in your quiet moments. This is so time and energy. There are plenty of times I'm like, I'm not interested in browbeating folks. People paid me for that. People used to pay me to kick my behind with training, kick my ASS. And I was like, I used to think like, wow, you want me to pay me to kick it? Like, I'm interested in being motivated when it comes to movement. And I love those clients where I'm inspired just as much as they're inspired by me. I'm inspired by my clients. That's what I want. I'm not interested in forcing somebody to do something. I'm not interested in forcing somebody to want to be with me or to be a parent. It's up to us to make better decisions. Call it simple. But this could neutralize a lot of this wasted energy of a lot of these channels online, male and female, and blame. Choosing better and taking accountability and realizing that a lot of it we're listening to some hypnotic music, following some fantastical gangster rap or glorifying being, being out there with our body parts. It's not all it's cracked up to be. At what point do we choose to see patterns, see shortcut? Step back objectively, pause on emotions, and look at the patterns. That's the shortcut. The best spent energy is to just reflectively look at what can I do? I made some poor decisions or some ill-informed decisions or some naive decisions. Whether I'm a nice person or not, even if I was naive, I have to live with those decisions. I made those decisions. Now what? Rather than just be entertained, because there's no shortage of folks pandering to us. But I notice patterns. If folks are not encouraging you to take accountability and responsibility for your life, whether that's religion or a personality, you might want to lace up your sneakers and go the other way. You might want to lace up your sneakers and go the other way. I'll take my chances with the garden. I get so much more from the ants, watching how they move the babies, the unborn, the eggs, and move the queen out of the way. That's just nature. I'm not making it up. Watching the geckos, watching the bees. I get more out of them than I do no offense, to any of these religious anecdotes. It's like so much common sense kicks in as you put your hands in the soil, you put your hands in the food. I get more than I've ever gotten out of different people's interpretation of scriptures that change at the drop of a dime, more times than they've written versions of these different books. I'm just saying. So what I got for y'all, peaceful consumption, personal movement practice, garden therapy, practices that we have access to, It's and a part of it, I think a lot of it's coming from trauma and fear. Rather than people make people bad or wrong, I still don't think that's effective. The young people, they're bad, they're wrong, they're making stupid decisions. Why would somebody want to make a stupid decision? It's coming from trauma. What are young people supposed to do with the trauma? What are half of or most of the adults supposed to do with the trauma? Being religion has not cut the mustard, just one woman's perspective. You can respectfully disagree. So what are you supposed to take and do with this? If you go to the therapist, it's great. Seek therapy. That could be useful. But when the time is up, your session is over. Pay up. Swipe your card. You're on your own. So these simple practices, lifestyle practices, can give us access to discernment, give us access to some kind of peace and some quiet. On this channel, I have quite a few relaxation videos, right? You can call them meditation. A lot of times I like to take a lot of the labels off of it because we can have a tendency to ego trip on a label. I'm vegan, I'm vegetarian, I'm raw, I'm this religion, I'm that religion, and just totally get thrown off track. Relaxation, slowing down, to breathe, to notice how much the mental processing, the mind, which is not the brain, the mind is a function of the brain, is all over the place. Some of us get irritated if we have to get quiet. Try it on your own. Some of us can't turn off the screens. It's a dopamine, it is a chemical reaction. So take this and do what you will. The goal is to be effective. The goal is to be healthy, not simply to project all of my stuff onto somebody else. What's that going to do for me? So I invite you to try relaxation, try on breathing, try eating in quiet sometimes. Are you able and your family to eat sometimes just in quiet, to focus on the food that's in front of you, the colors, the smells? Do you realize a lot of times we're not tasting the food? We're tasting cheap food. All we're tasting is artificial sugar, salt, fat, sugar, salt, fat, sugar, salt, fat. So what can I tell you? Some of us are so comfortable or don't begin to know how to break out of these paradigms that we just go with complacency and go with the groupthink, and we have to keep going for more of a dopamine hit on these screens so we don't have to sit and be honest with ourselves. So this is not about making ourselves bad or wrong. If we can't assess, if we can't discern, if we can't be honest, if we don't cultivate awareness, then there's no opportunity to have access, to have an objective perspective to make any kind of effective change, lasting, sustainable change for ourselves, let alone the coming generation. So perhaps this is helpful to somebody. I don't know. I just felt a need to desire to to share. And so many times I'm like, don't say anything because I'm not interested in ranting. I'm not interested in or I'm hopefully I'm not wasting my energy. Perhaps this could be helpful to someone. And how can we measure helpfulness? If you're motivated to get into action around the things that you say are your core values. If we take a lot of information from the internet, I would question if you're not motivated to eat healthier, to get into the garden, to get into a movement practice, then what are we doing? But just sitting around maybe waiting to expire and pass the chips, pass another beer. You know. So those resources are available to you. There's a lot of time and energy and thought that went into them. Again, there is Whole Living Foods in the hood with menus to fit your budget, with pictures, $5, $20, $200, which all that fresh produce and some ideas on what you can prepare, pictures of what I've been doing all these years. Whatever label you want to call yourself is not the most important thing because whatever label you want to ascribe to yourself, everyone can benefit from more whole, fresh, living, unprocessed foods. For those folks that be made feeling a way, right? Because we're human, you may be feeling a way about having additional unhelpful adipose tissue and having a lot of acne. And I invite you to slow down without judging yourself. I invite you to consider if you do have a lot of acne and hyperpigmentation, then your body is communicating something to you. It's telling you something. Your liver is speaking to you. It's telling you, your body's telling you that I'm not processing what you're putting into it, or I have a whole lot of undigested meals and substances masquerading as food in me that I haven't been able to metabolize. So we can take perhaps our instruction from there and start to ask questions. Well, what is it that I need? What's missing? Rather than just pile more powders and pills and you know uh, superficial attempts at dealing with things, go to the root of our self-medication and ask ourselves, because we have a divine onboard innate intelligence that all of us were born with. We have a divine onboard innate intelligence that each and every human being was born with. Now we haven't been encouraged, even though people say trust yourself, but that's not the messaging. Usually we're getting conflicting information from these screens. Quiet though, the quiet, sometimes eating in quiet, creating some space can give you access to listening to that internal intelligence. I invite you to make use of the early morning hours when it's really quiet, to surround yourself as much nature, even if you have an apartment. To maybe perhaps, as I was speaking to someone that's participating in the nutritional reset, shout out to my folks participating in the nutritional reset. Perhaps you can put nature sounds on, ambient music, tea light candles and candles, because actually that natural light starts to cue you in almost subconsciously to quieting down. In the quiet, you have access to discern all the voices and all the messaging that's going on here. A lot of times it's overwhelming the brain to the point where it's like it's overwhelmed, self-medicate, food, orange pay, for folks, the men folks. It's like I wish we could see or acknowledge that a lot of the things that are playing to vices and appetites, they weaken us. It's a conflict of interest and it's for profit. I wish that we could see that the pandering is making us glorify not relating with one another. And I'm not saying anybody should tolerate abusive relationships or ill treatment. But listening to these folks pandering online, I'm going to have no problem with everybody expiring alone with no kind of love and care because they've lost the ability to be mature, be responsible, and to learn how to relate respectfully. Listening to these online personalities, you'll wind up alone. I'm not saying settle, but you'll wind up glorifying being alone. Got to be very, very careful when we're taking from these online personalities and to ask yourself what they stand to gain. Anyway, I'm signing out. Oh my God, I pulled a card on myself yesterday. Yeah, do your own readings, right? Instead of going to all these random people. Because sometimes I would say we can be using astrology and cards, even them to a certain degree, as a bypass for some things that are just right in front of us, common sense, which we have, but those muscles are kind of weakened in the environment that we're in because it's more profitable for us to sit and consume mindlessly, not just chips, not just beer, not just weed, but to consume what we're taking in because this is the latest real estate in your brain. The functioning of our brain is changing. Now, folks that have the ability to focus is a commodity. They're being paid more. This is who companies are looking to hire now. Folks that have a focus, but many of us are losing the ability to focus. Our children are losing the ability to focus. We're going to bypass ADHD. So if we can't, in our quiet moments, be honest about our state of where we're at, then what can we expect anybody to do for us, right? It's true. We're going to have to write the prescription and engage and execute the prescription for our own healing. Because who has a vested interest in your healing? Who has a vested interest in you developing the type of quality relationships? They're not coming out of the back. They're not coming out of this illusion of we're working on ourselves just because we watch a YouTube video. A lot of times it's uncomfortable to address a lot of the naive, ill-informed, impulsive, trauma-based, and traumatized decisions. We're accountable for that, right? We're not usually going to get a high five. All right, so I'm out of here. Feel free to comment respectfully, like if you care for this comment. Sometimes I don't want to put this kind of content on my channel. I don't want to talk about this stuff. And then sometimes I feel called because just a lot of the conversation and stuff, I'm like, I just don't find it helpful. I don't find it strengthening me. There are a few though, if you're looking and it's on your radar, there is some positive stuff to be had on the internet. As I've said before, it's up to us to make a positive use of the internet. There's languages to be learned, there's skills to be learned, there's plumbing to be learned, gardening to be learned. What are we using the internet for? That's why I take a lot of that stuff off the table. I'm not worried about this. I can free up mental resources and physical resources for what is going to multiply. When I invest my time and energy, I need it to multiply. If you're giving away your most valuable resource, your time and your energy, and it's not multiplying, then you're accountable for that too. That comes up in discernment too. So in that event, I'm out of here. If any folks are interested in ongoing coaching, that's going to be available. It's a lot. It's coaching on good decision making, and it has to, for me, end up in an activity. I like to come together around an activity. So the coaching is going to end up in your garden. It's going to end up in your reading. It's going to end up in your movement practice, as well as in personal development. So if you're interested in ongoing coaching, feel free to reach out to me at body-culinary.com and state what it is that you're interested in. All right, y'all. So like, comment, subscribe. Y'all create a great rest of the day. Just because you said so, because a lot of times you're just going to have to make a decision up there. And I'll see y'all soon.